everybody. You're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Billy Z.
I'm Justin Allen.
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
We don't have Matt with us. Matt, unfortunately, has a sore throat. And if you're hearing how Justin and I sound, this is the triage episode. I got hit with a terrible cough over the last hour. Came out of nowhere. Justin's been dealing with some illness since last Friday. Is that right, Justin?
Woohoo, Phlegm Factory.
Yeah, so we're doing our best to keep to that weekly schedule, and we're here for you because we love you.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked about new comics in a while, so why don't we start off with Marvel? Brian, I understand you've read some X books?
You get right into the X-Men. That's what everybody loves. The series, the universe, the little microcosm of Marvel that just... Except I'm kind of done with it. I'm not a fan of anything that's going on right now with the X-Men, and I will admit, part of it, I'm not going to lie, I think we may have touched on this before, I don't like what they've done to Cyclops. I haven't liked it since Bendis, well, really since the, the Avengers vs. X-Men kind of turned him into this thing, but it went back even further. So I keep reading the 3 now X books. We've got Extraordinary X-Men is the book where most of the mutants have ended up in a sort of microcosm of limbo called Haven, X-Haven. And it's got Storm. It's pretty much all of the miscellaneous mutants from the new Jean Grey school. It's got Nightcrawler, sort of. So he's there. He's not. He's more of the damsel in distress right now, but he's there. It's got Iceman, older Iceman. It's got, most interestingly, it's got the young alternate, or I guess past Jean Grey, not alternate. And then it's got the future alternate Logan from Old Man Logan. And I think those are the two things about the book that I'm the most interested about. But what they did in the last issue, which gets back to my whole Cyclops thing, is they pretty much brought back Cyclops, but kind of taking a page out of the 2000s. I think it was not the Chosen. What was the one where they merged like Cyclops and Apocalypse or something? Was that
the
series?
12.
The 12.
It was when they finished up the 12 and then they did that whole bad miniseries Search for Cyclops or after they got merged. I know what you're talking about.
So it reminded me of that in that they've taken Cyclops, who I guess this is regular not old Cyclops, but the Cyclops we've all known and loved for the last 50-ish years, whatever. Like, it's turned him into this weird, I guess, beast-like creature, and this is all Mr. Sinister engineering this as a way, I guess, to somehow fight the Inhuman Terrigen situation and also claim his, place as the genetic overlord of all things Summers. But I don't
I want a t-shirt that says that.
Yeah. I don't like it. Like, I like all the parts, but I don't like the way they're being moved around, and I don't like I will admit, I think, Justin, you like the visual style. I don't care for it. It's a little too Joe Mad for me in a bad way.
I understand.
I understand that. What I was thinking though, but with I didn't even think about like the throwback to the Apocalypse merge type thing. What it reminded me of is the end of, with what Remender did to Professor Xavier with Red Skull, kind of taken the hero's body, like what he did with Xavier, and corrupted it. And that's kind of where I was looking at it, almost like an homage to that storyline, and hopefully maybe we'll get something back good.
Yeah. That's possible. I hadn't even thought of that, but yeah, that's like the last page reveal, so we don't quite know what they're doing with it and like what he is. But again, I guess my biggest thing is I just don't like what they're doing with Cyclops. So that's my big thing. And the art's the art. I can get past that, obviously, if it's a good story. But other than the weird Jean Grey Logan thing, I don't like the Iceman stuff so far because, admittedly, I don't want them to keep referring to the fact that Iceman has come out. I don't want that in any book. I don't need that validation or whatever. But I don't love, I think that one of the characters brings it up, like, hey, we need to talk. And like they just completely blow over. Like I don't want to talk about that right now. I got other things to do. And I think something similar happened in not all new.
Yeah.
What's the all new X-Men? I think something similar happened in that with Young Iceman. Like they made a passing reference to it, but like sort of dismissing it. And that kind of makes me worried that was like the bone they threw to the LGBT community that really likes this new plot development without actually having to deal with it. Like they don't want to rehash, they don't want to make it a thing, so they kind of threw that out there and just moved on, which maybe they'll bring it back later. I don't know. And again, I don't want this to be all about Iceman, the various Icemen and their gay exploits. I don't need that. I mean, it'd be fun. It could be actually a lot of fun if they do it. If like Steve Orlando was writing it or something. But
can I interject here? So older Bobby is out now too?
Yes. I do like his explanation for it, because his explanation was how here he is, he's been dealing with this, he's been dealing with that, and now he has to deal with this. He's like, and you're dealing with this on top of everything. How are you more put together than I am? I mean,
right, that doesn't make any sense. I'm confused what you're saying.
It was very well done in X-Men 600. At least I thought it was.
Maybe I should read that after having it for a couple weeks here.
Bendis did a great job with it and didn't make a big thing of it, but I just feel like so far the new writers, and I should be clear, All New is by Dennis Hopeless, who I actually really like overall, and art by Mark Waid, and
art by Mark Waid
channeling his best. What's that?
Bagley.
Oh, sorry, God, I get those two confused because they actually kind of look the same.
And that's art where I'm not liking Mark Bagley. So.
Well, he's doing his best Alan Davis impression, if you really kind of follow it. And it sort of works actually more for me than some of his more recent stuff that he's done. So overall, I don't like it. I don't like it.
Yeah, what he says is, it says, I put all my energy into being a mutant and an X-Men and putting my life in danger every 10 minutes for everyone else. And that's not a brag. I made that choice. And you ask yourself, can I have just one part of my life that I'm not being persecuted for? Just today, maybe tomorrow, and then the next week. And the years go by and it gets easier to put that part of yourself away. Then so much of that time goes by when you say to yourself at night, maybe you'll do things and you'll see you're straight. That's when Jean Grey says, well, some people don't come out until they're 80. And that's when they go through, and he says, there's a better argument that you might be a better X-Man and a better teacher if you're ready to be the whole you and embrace your whole self. And, I mean, it's a really great line. I mean,
okay,
I'll
check out 600 at some point then.
They're definitely going to refer back to it, I think, in All New more so than Extraordinary. I would hope so. I think in Extraordinary they're kind of going to put the more personal lives of the characters on the back burner while they explore the Jean and Logan relationship. I think that's going to be taking center stage just as much as Magic and Colossus have been. And Brian, I'm surprised that you didn't even mention Colossus's beard.
Because I was about to get to that.
Yeah, because that alone, is making me interested in Extraordinary. And I kind of have the same feelings that you do about Extraordinary X-Men. I like it, but I don't love it, to kind of quote Garfunkel and Oates there. But it's All New to me is probably because it's being written by Dennis Hopeless, and I think he has a better handle on Bendis's work. I think that it's a good continuation of the All New series. Going from All New Volume 1 to All New Volume 2. It focuses a little bit more on the younger X-Men, the younger versions of the original X-Men. You've got Bobby, you've got Hank, you've got Angel, who's there with...
Don't forget Pickles. That's very important.
Pickles is... Oh, I love Pickles. And, and I think that's a little bit interesting. And, talking about how Cyclops, for Extraordinary is kind of a new wrinkle. I think that the ghost of Cyclops basically is one of the main themes of All New X-Men, because you've got young Scott trying to erase the damage that old Scott did and is just angry about it, and here's a whole bunch of terrorist teenagers that are thinking it's cool. I think there's
wearing Cyclops' face mask,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more interesting stuff going on psychologically in that book than what's going on in Extraordinary. I think that they're trying to explore a little bit more of that with Jean Grey and Logan's got this really dark past, even though he's from an alternate future, and Jean's got this really dark future that doesn't exist anymore because she's she's screwed up the past because the past doesn't exist anymore. Whatever.
It's a mind fuck.
Yeah, I'm not too interested so much in their relationship. I don't think that's, I think we're also stretching the definition of December-May romance as well, because Logan's supposed to be about 200, 300 years old at that point, and Jean is only 16 or 17, so...
I don't think they're suggesting anything more yet, and I don't know if they will or not, but actually I feel like that's going to develop more as sort of a paternal, father-daughter thing. I mean, maybe I am wrong and they're going to go the other way, but I think the obvious choice is to make them romantic because of their pasts and all that, but that age difference is quite a task to surmount, and I don't want to see Logan surmounting it.
Literally.
Ooh.
Although,
See what you did there?
I like that.
Yes.
I think old beefy Logan is kind of hot, but yeah, old beefy Logan and young co-ed Jean kind of skeevy. But yeah, I think I kind of am concerned that they're going to spend a lot of time on that maybe we don't really want to go that direction. If they try to do another thing where it's Old Man Logan and Jean Grey are the new Wolverine and Jubilee, I know some people are going to go for that. I don't know if I want to see that rehash.
Do you guys? Oh, so we should back up because I don't think we explained Pickles. And admittedly, people who are reading the book know exactly what we're talking about. But probably one of the best things of this book is the fact that they're driving around in this RV, like a camper bug, almost like a VW bug camper thing. But it's like a TARDIS, and so it's bigger on the inside. Which when they said that, I was like high-fiving Dennis Hopeless, virtually. Like I just wanted to give him a high. Anyway. Pickles is one of the Bamfs, and a Bamf is, of course, the sound Nightcrawler makes when he teleports. And if you've been reading previously Jason Aaron and Jason Latour's, what were those called?
Wolverine.
What X-Men book was?
It was
what is
Wolverine, it? Wolverine and the X-Men.
That's right. And then Spider-Man and the X-Men at one point, too. Basically, the Bamfs were like all these clones of Nightcrawler's soul, or... What was the actual explanation behind? I don't even remember. It was some weird.
It's been so long, and there's been so many, but
they're like Nightcrawler Smurfs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're like they're basically
whiskey.
the doll. Do you remember the Nightcrawler doll that he gave to his girlfriend?
Uh-huh.
It's like if they came alive. Okay. Anyway, so they have one of those Bamfs with them inexplicably. And he teleports them wherever he needs to. Like he's there specifically to do that job and then, hang out with them. So it's quite awesome. I think that's one of the best touches they gave the thing. But Steve, I agree with you. I think I like the exploring the whole knowing what your future could be. And in fact, I guess kind of was. How does that mentally affect you? Yeah. And it just sucks they're doing it with like my favorite character. So I also like the Angel X-23 thing.
Yes.
Because that's just like kind of an odd pairing to think about that, as X-23 is like the female Wolverine. And now that she has fully embraced the title of Wolverine, and put on the yellow and blue, outfit, like it is kind of like, Angel and Wolverine, which, in another dimension, they would both be men. And so you can kind of think about that. I don't know. I think that relationship is fun. And that seems to be one of the big focal points of all new.
Not just all new X-Men, but all new Wolverine, which is kind of I really hope they don't fall into the same trap. But X-23's she's getting to the point where she's just as much all over the map and completely inconsistent in terms of time frame as Wolverine used to be, where he'd pop up in every single book. At the same time. But, we've seen Wolverine and Angel hanging out together in the Alps in Paris, in New York, and now they're, popping around with the all-new X-Men. It's kind of interesting, and I'm wondering if that means that we're only really going to explore their relationship in one of the books rather than both of the books, because, the books can't really affect each other as much if they're going to be all over the world doing other things at the same time as the other book. And, Marvel's always had some difficulty with that. with Wolverine. I hope they don't go the same route with X-23 Wolverine.
So I think. Oh, sorry, Justin. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say real quick while we're still on that. What do you think of the whole revelation of Jean Grey liking Hank McCoy?
Well, that happened in the earlier books, right?
That was in,
it happened
that
in
was
600.
just in 600. That was just.
And then they
month.
completely abandoned it. They dropped that whole story beat on the floor.
Do you think they'll continue it, or?
I don't think
they kind of. I think they even say something in the beginning of Extraordinary. They're like, "Oh yeah, we tried to work that out, and I moved on." And that's when she has the whole date, and then the guy turns out to be a mutant hater. Yeah, no, it was kind of a quick throwaway thing. But yeah, it's kind of like they didn't. And so here's the thing. I don't know how all this was coordinated, but did Bendis? I mean, well, so they had to know about that part to sort of get rid of it. But like the handoff is awkward to me, and I don't. Like Steve was saying, I don't think that both writers are doing as much to make it seamless. And there is, of course, the gap and all that. So that may factor in as well. But yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. And I would have been okay if they had been dating. I think that would have been interesting. But instead now she's shunted off. So it may have just been, well, we can't keep Beast in this book too. So let's, end this and move on. Are you guys okay? I think Steve, you're not reading, or you haven't read yet Uncanny, the first issue.
Not yet, but I know Justin has.
Yeah.
So first of all, can we get out of the way the fact that he's done the book before. I am not a big fan of Greg Land.
It's like almost like I've seen everything before. It's just tweaked just a little bit different. Like I don't know quite how to put my finger on it. It's not. It doesn't look original.
I was going to say what Greg Land's problem for me is I think everything looks like he's tracing photographs.
But isn't that his rep, though? That's been his rep for years and years.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So anytime he shows up, it reminds me of how I don't love that. And that can actually work. Who is it? Harris, I think is his last name. He did Starman for a while, and he did he's done a couple of things. Anyway, so other artists can do that kind of. Tony Harris, yeah. It can work and be interesting, but I don't think this is that. And his female anatomy at times can be a bit ridiculous. Is it Karma is on the team on this one, I think?
Monet.
Oh, Monet. And I'm looking at one panel, and this is right after Archangel, who we'll get to in a minute. Okay, there's something that there's that we got to talk about too.
Yeah.
But you've got Monet, and she's of course in the skin tight outfit. Whatever, we get that's the thing. But there's one panel where I think her boob, like it's like a side profile, is bigger than her face.
Yes.
Like, I appreciate the female form as much as the next gay, especially breasts as much as the next gay guy. Like, don't get me wrong. But I also don't really love the objectification of women in comics, and I think that nowadays that's really a poor choice. Like 20 years ago, you can got away with it, and the people did, and because women didn't have as much of a voice in comics. But now, of all times, tart your people up like that and make that a thing. I feel like it's really like he's out of touch with the sensibilities.
Can I just say something in regards to that? Because everyone knows who listens to this show. I'm not reading too much Marvel these days, but I would think that seeing images like that would be kind of jarring at this point, because that is a motif, unless you read shit like Grimm's fairy tales or whatever, that you just don't see as much anymore. And maybe that's what you're tapping into, isn't the norm anymore. And that's a good thing, naturally, yeah.
The one thing that kind of made it, I don't want to say okay, but gave it a little justification, is Monet just kind of seemed to have a personality change where she's more definitely sexually aggressive, more than what I've ever seen her. And actually, I mean, she seems just a different type of person than anything that I've seen in prior, unless I've missed a big chunk of her story somewhere. Oh, she just doesn't seem like the character I remember from Gen X or X Factor.
They had a run, I think. Oh God, there's so many X books, but there was a storyline she had in one of the books. It was it was the all-female X-Men book. I think Brian Wood was writing it for a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was a main character
She
in
was?
that, and I think she had her own story as part of that.
Okay.
So, but I don't remember her being hypersexual either. That's
No.
not something they built up to.
That's definitely something in the adjectiveless X-Men book that was the primarily all-female team. She was actually more of a leader. She was kind of a counterbalance to Storm, but very serious. For the most part, she did tell a couple jokes, but there was no hypersexualization. So it is kind of strange that this would be coming out from Cullen Bunn, and especially Cullen Bunn, because I expect him to write very dynamic, very nuanced characters with a sinister edge, like he has been doing with Magneto before that book ended. And it seems like
And Sinestro as well.
Exactly. So he can kind of take that sinister, villainous anti-hero type and really make you care about him, making him very dynamic. It sounds like what he's doing to Monet is kind of the reverse. It's weird.
However, he did this perfect with Sabretooth.
Yes.
At least in my
like
opinion,
the
because
Sabretooth.
I love Sabretooth.
They followed up the Rick Remender, the big Axis switch that they all sort of, or not all of them, but some of the people switched alignments or whatever, if you will.
Yep.
And they're keeping that. Sabretooth is sort of he feels bad for his past and now wants to be a better mutant. So that is
kind of
nice.
like Mystique.
And Land actually, his Sabretooth looks actually quite hunky at it. It looks looks yummy. But this is something my biggest thing that I have to say. Magneto now has the ugliest costume since Uncanny X-Men 200. This is just the ugliest. Actually, it reminds me of like a bad Cosmic Boy with a helmet and a cape.
It's
this
the
black scarlet.
Circles.
It's the circles.
It's just not. Honestly, it's just kind of sissy for Magneto.
Ooh, maybe they'll explain this in Secret Wars #9, how he gets his new costume.
Oh my god!
I guess it's back.
Is it like
It's
Disco
weird, too,
Legion
because
weird or?
No, it's not sexy Legion weird. It's just it's.
It's like Magneto and so we should get back to this. Archangel's in the book now, and he's Archangel. He's not Angel, so he's not young Angel, of course. He's not Warren Worthington the third or whatever from before, like the one we all love and know, who got reset into this sort of naive Angel character. Again, they just kind of brush that to the side, or they're gonna explain it eventually. Who knows? So he's this. Basically, they call him like a drone. And they've managed to figure out a way to call him down to the fight from like the air, I think from a Blackbird. But he doesn't have any personality. He's not responding to anybody. And so Betsy, of course, is there and trying to figure out, of course, if she can save him, bring him back, yada, yada. So it's weird, though. His costume is like what Magneto used to wear, but with his wings, because it's like black and white. And Magneto is wearing... Again, like Justin was saying, like I don't even know what the hell it is, but it's the same Magneto. So Cullen Bunn was writing Magneto's book before Secret Wars, and the only callback to that whole story was something about when Magneto really uses his powers. It's like he's killing himself. Like there's this pushing him closer to death, which they played with sort of in this whole use of mutant growth hormone and trying to save Manhattan.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But it's like. That was a great book that explored Magneto as a villain but making you understand why he did what he did. So far, this book is just like a shitty, not even continuation of it, but like just shitty bang of ridiculous, contorted. I don't know. But what sucks the most to me, and this bothers me. So Uncanny X-Men has always been the central title. Okay, always. And no one else used Uncanny. So then
Wouldn't you say that when New X-Men came about, that became the central title, though?
I guess it for a while.
For a little while?
Yeah. No, and it's had hiatuses and it's had things like that. But,
right.
Because I think it was on hiatus during that period, right? When New X-Men happened?
Oh, when, I'd say it went on hiatus recently, but it just, when X-Men... Oh, when new X-Men, you mean the title?
When New X-Men hit, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
right.
X-Men, it kind of...
So it takes a break, it bows out, but when it's there, it's usually like the epicenter, right? Well, now, since Uncanny X-Force kind of took Uncanny and did that. That's what this book feels like. They should have just called it Uncanny X-Force and made Extraordinary X-Men Uncanny X-Men, because that's what the normal relation of these books usually is. And this book is X-Force. I mean, there's no getting around the fact that this is a mutant like strike team trying to kind of keep the fight going when the rest of the mutants have left the field and gone to X-Haven. Like, that's the point. And so they're not getting revenge, but they're like the Strike Force. And so, again, I feel like it's just a weird world. Up is down. Lambs or tigers are sleeping with the cats, or I don't know, whatever the crazy, things that
dogs
you hear.
and cats living together.
There we go. So it's just weird. It doesn't make me happy, but I will tell you, if there's nothing else we want to add about that book, there's one more X book that you may not have been reading. Has anybody read Deadpool and Cable?
No.
I have it. I have not got to read it yet.
It's webcomic first, or Comixology first, whatever. It's written by Fabian Nicieza. Okay. Art, oh God, it's interesting. Oh, Riley Brown, and actually they're co-credited on the story. But let me tell you, I'm not a huge Deadpool fan, right? Deadpool's whatever, too much, all over the place, overexposure, whatever. But this book has everything I want in a Deadpool and Cable book. It's got Cable making some jokes, but not being silly. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's got Deadpool being silly, but not ridiculous. It even references things like all the things that's been happening in the Deadpool book with, I guess Deadpool has a son now, and he's got a wife, but they're not, the wife is like a demon. So there's like the whole Mrs. Deadpool thing from Secret Wars. Like, it's referencing a lot of the stuff, so it's firmly in continuity. And it's even got, Cable sort of, they reference the whole, he had his telekinesis ripped away and all the stuff that happened to him and the clones from the other X-Force book. But it's a different story. It's totally standalone. Like, once you get past all that, it's just kind of a back to what Cable and Deadpool used to be. And it's so refreshing. And I don't know if it's refreshing because it's what I'm more accustomed to, like it's throwback, or if it's just well done. But I really enjoy it. And so they're releasing it in print now. So if you buy them online, you obviously don't need to buy them again, but they're doing two for one, like 2 stories in one issue, because the webcomics were shorter. So, I highly, highly recommend it. If you have not checked it out and you're a fan of either character, definitely read Deadpool and Cable.
For a second there, I was thinking you were going to say, it's got everything I want in a Deadpool and Cable book. Deadpool and Cable. There you go.
No, actually, I mean, if I was being snarky, that would have been great. It was fun. Like, it made me smile, and really, it actually made me miss Cable, because the last few incarnations of Cable have been not my favorite. Like, I shouldn't say the last few, but I loved, it was Humphreys. Was it Humphreys who did one of the X-Force books with Cable in it? Oh man,
that was
the X-Force before Remender.
Cable and X-Force.
Not before Remender.
Yeah,
Okay, so then was the Cable and X-Force?
Yeah, but it was the one with the art. Oh, it was Hopeless? Okay, then I loved his Cable. But when Cy Spurrier came on and did that whole reboot and merged the X-Forces, that was and the art killed me too. But whatever. So yeah, this made me miss Cable as a central figure, who he also shows up. I don't remember if we talked about this. We may have. Uncanny Avengers. Did we talk about Cable showing up in that book?
I don't think so.
I think most of us have kind of ignored that book or stuff.
Go back and I'll tell you right now, it's not as good as the other stuff we've been talking about. I think it's marginally. Well, the art is another thing altogether, but whatever. The story is interesting enough, and they brought in Cable in a major role for the book. I don't know if he's going to be sticking around. I mean, it may just be for this arc, but actually not too bad. Like, it kind of gets to the whole Inhuman, Terrigen, this and that as well. I mean, all the books, pretty much every freaking book, even Hellcat brings in the damn Inhumans, but Cable shows up in a big way, and it's that nice seeing Cable as a hero, kind of playing the Terminator role, which never occurred to me until maybe, I don't know, a few years ago, that's basically what Cable is he's a fucking Terminator. But
Yeah, I don't know if any of you guys
I
are
feel
reading
bad.
Squadron Supreme. The Uncanny Avengers make an appearance in that.
Isn't that the team that the Squadron Supreme is going to like go up against? Isn't that the
Yep,
whole thing with
yep.
that?
Yep, after the death of Namor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was, anyway, so Uncanny Avengers, since we've already mentioned it, it's not an X book, but it has X-Men in it, and in a bigger role than I thought would happen after the whole Terrigenesis mess that they've got.
Okay.
The only thing again is the art, and it's going to kill me. I'll have to find it real quick. The art's weird, and the facial expressions some of the characters make is kind of ridiculous.
Okay.
And it's another book that has Deadpool all over it, so you're like, ugh.
Okay, well, why don't we take a time out on the X there? I'm putting a T, though it should be an X here above my head. You had mentioned a fun book, Brian, and I would like to transition over to what you thought of Patsy Walker Hellcat.
Oh,
Yay!
okay. This
Start with
and
the
Steve,
cover. Start with the cover.
start with the cover.
Yeah, just the cover itself. And I'm talking about the main cover.
I was going to say, brother, which one? Yeah.
Which one?
I don't know which one I have now.
Basically, it's the general standard cover with Patsy Walker being hounded by, hundreds of people trying to get her autograph.
Okay.
With the comics and her.
There's
phone
a lot
and
of white.
A lot of white. What's really interesting about this is it's great. It kind of gives you an idea of what this book is going to feel like. But right over Patsy's left shoulder, you can see a Kate Leth, or what looks very much like a Kate Leth, pumping her fists in the air, which is perfect.
Oh my God, I didn't even notice that. Oh, that is totally her. That's awesome.
And I'm not too sure who the person directly behind her left shoulder with the glasses and the goatee beard thing is, but I'm sure that's probably somebody else, either related to the book or friends with Kate Leth or Brittany Williams. Because he looks
it possibly? Oh God, it's not. What's his name? Writes. He does the art with Fraction. It's not. Oh crap! He's writing Howard the Duck.
Zdarsky?
Not Zdarsky.
Zdarsky?
No, it's not.
No,
because he's got the facial hair, but it's the glasses. It's like a different thing. But
the chunky glasses. I'm trying to figure out if that's somebody because he looks very familiar.
He does. So what I love, let's stay on the cover for a second because I do have the same cover. I realize. Yeah. It tells you everything you got to know, like you said. It gives you a sense for the tone. Mm-hmm. It lovingly sort of introduces or recapitulates the ideas or a thing from Alias / Jessica Jones by having Patsy Walker, aka Hellcat. Mm-hmm. Right? There's a little bit of that there. You also get this thing on the foreground where the fans are bringing her either like an iPad or a physical copy of these comics that say Patsy Walker on them. And even though, Patsy Walker was a character from the romance comics of the 60s, I think, or was it 50s?
She actually dates back to 1944. She actually
now, was that romance comics or was...
It was romance comics. It was a comic book based on the hero Miss America. And after the first issue, they transitioned them into Patsy Walker Miss America. She actually predates Millie the Model.
Mm. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what is interesting, and I think this is a new twist on it. They reference that, but they make that now about, like, her mother wrote that about her. And so it's also merging in some of the ideas from Jessica Jones, the Netflix series, where she had this controlling mother that made her do all these things and sort of took advantage of her for her own livelihood. So, like, that's all in the cover. Like, if you just look at the cover and then the rest of the story, and there's a lot of fun things to get into there, but, like, that sets you up pretty well for the rest of the story. And who Hellcat is, yeah. Steve, you talk. I've talked a lot.
Oh, well, I was just, it totally, that's why I like this cover. And I think that's, cause I've been a fan of Kate Leth for a while since her webcomics. And, I've just been watching her, get more and more opportunities over the past 2 years. Like basically she kind of came from webcomics and, worked her way through Boom Studios. So Adventure Time and, I think I want to say it was IDW. She did the Edward Scissorhands sequel. But, getting to work on a Marvel book, and I know she's done some short story work. I think she had something in one of the Secret Wars romance comic, whatever that was, and I'm not entirely sure, but this is great that they gave her own book, and it captures. This is Kate Leff, her voice perfectly. She's fun. It's kind of an all ages voice, but she just kind of brings in a very just a bubbly kind of sensibility to these characters. And obviously she references back to the She-Hulk series, so where Patsy Walker was the assistant / drinking buddy for She-Hulk in the series that who Charles Soule wrote that, right? I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which sadly ended after only 12 issues. But it kind of brings that in and then goes off into a different direction. She immediately introduces some new characters. This Ian Sue, who's a Inhuman who doesn't look like an Inhuman, but he can move things with his mind.
Telekinian is his name.
Telekinian,
which
yes.
is awful.
Terrible name. And they make
But
And
like,
they even
they
say
make
so
fun
in the
of it.
book. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, they give the quick and dirty, history of Hellcat. She was a model, and her mom wrote books about her, and then she, had some terrible romances and went to hell apparently, and then got trained on the moon by Moondragon, and then she was She-Hulk's assistant. Okay, now we're moving on to what we're gonna do now. And it's fun. She's bubbly. She's super positive. It's a really giddy book. Kind of has the same feel to me as Zdarsky and Henderson's Squirrel Girl, where you get the silliness, you get the bubbly optimism, and you get the quick pacing, because a lot of things happen very quickly. And I do have to say, it's another snide introduction, or sly introduction of another gay character.
Two gay characters.
Two gay characters, yeah, with Ian Sue, and of course, now, Bill, I don't know, I never read any of the historical Patsy Walker comics.
Yeah, that was her buddy Tubbs.
Her buddy Tubbs is also now a bear who owns a gay bookstore, which is pretty awesome.
Burley Books.
Burley Books, of course. And he is cute, adorable, and woofy, and funny, and of course hires Ian. And so now everybody's got a job, and it ends the book with a good status quo to start the new series, with her kind of being a super temp, I guess managing a super temp agency for New Mutants and Inhumans and whatnot. And it's a great setup. It's a great first issue that really gets you ready for the silliness and fun to ensue. And I don't know about you, but Brittany Williams' art, what's your impression, Justin?
He had to step away for a bit. Let me not necessarily talk about her art, but about the book as a whole for a second. Keep in mind, I really, really enjoyed this book. I really thought it was funny, and the pace was so brisk. I worry that we're going to get really substandard versions of this type of book in the days and years to come, because this has been a success for both of the big two houses, whether you look at Squirrel Girl or in some ways Gotham Academy and Batgirl.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I worry we're going to get the crappy version of this really soon with a character that it doesn't suit. This is fine. I don't want too much of this, though.
Right. It's for the right character with the right creators, this works great. But when it starts becoming the standard, you're right, it's going to be awful.
Right.
We don't want another damage control. Yeah.
We never wanted a damage control.
So,
but I also have to say that I thought the setup of her setting up this employment agency is a really, really good mechanism. I imagine the series is going to be a lot of done in ones. And
yeah.
I
Like
think,
Squirrel Girl.
Like Squirrel Girl. And I think that's going to be a very fun ride, and you're going to see reintroductions of characters that you haven't seen in ages, and you're going to see interpretations of characters that you never expected to see in this way, and I think it's going to be a very fun ride. I think this is going to be a successful book, and I just worry about what progeny might ensue. So, they're excited.
So,
yeah. I mean, it
talking
depends
about
on
the
how
art.
the sales are going to be.
This is one of those books that really tries the formula. Let's see how, because it's a character that does not normally sustain a book, So, and historically, like, short miniseries, bit parts, and other stuff. So,
And team
that'll be really, it'll be a real test of it. I want to mention the art though, and specifically, like, it's very much in Kate Leth's like domain, even though it's not her art. But very manga influence. Lots of the facial expressions that sort of reduce in complexity down to caricatures to react to certain things.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. Visual.
There is some chibi. There's some chibi bits where every once in a while Patsy Walker as Hellcat sort of becomes a chibi version of herself in sort of like a silly flashback or as a reaction, like you said. Yeah.
Visual jokes. Kind of like, Zdarsky is known for doing this, but other artists like fill in these little details. Brandon Graham is actually known for doing a lot of these. Specifically when they're in the Burley books, I have to mention there's a section of like the books on the shelf, whatever, and one of them is Beer with a Queer. There's Oh Man, and it's got a picture of a guy flexing. There's a poster that's got a actual bear in like plaid that says Bear With Me, which is hilarious.
It's the
and
same
then
plaid shirt that Tubbs is wearing.
Oh yeah, it is. And then
There's no way we're not going to be calling him Tubbs.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
that's
not
he's,
Tom.
It's
Tubbs.
going to be Tubbs.
he's Tubbs of Finland. There's also Patsy reading Butts, Volume 9, and having like one of my first experiences going into a gay bookstore and finding one of those kind of books, which is like, I think it was the I'd probably find it on my shelf if I looked. Like the homoerotic, not even homoerotic, the gay sex comics that had like whatever, and then volume X, like just exactly like what you'd find in some of these bookstores if you were like just, looking around and catching stuff. And then another one that I love called Let's Be Brief, and it's a picture of like briefs on it. Like just, that's so great when they work in these little tweaks. I love it. I love it.
With so you cut your own hair.
Yeah.
Oh.
You cut your hair. Well, and also right next to the Oh Man, that's an Oh Mama, and it's the female version, which is really fun. But it's creative, it's silly. There's just a lot to really take in the backgrounds, and I think the art almost tricks you into thinking that this is this is more for kids. But I think there's a lot of like little side details that are, I would say, appeal to a lot more mature and experienced audiences.
Yeah, and I think what you just mentioned there, Steve, is I think a big contributor to the charm of the book is that there's so much going on. I love all that dialogue that's going on between Ian and Patsy, and at the same time, you have Tubbs and I can't call her Jen, She-Hulk, in the back doing shots. I just love that there's so much going on at almost in every panel. There's what's in the foreground, and then there's so much business in the background.
Mm-hmm.
I really thought it was a really well constructed book.
If I could say something here, considering that we've so many similarities between this and Squirrel Girl, I love this book heads and tails above Squirrel Girl. I think I'm the only one of us here that does not particularly care for Squirrel Girl, and I'm not.
I haven't read enough Squirrel Girl to make a real determination on that.
I feel like I'm alone in comicdom not liking Squirrel Girl. Yet I love this character, or I love this book, and it's so similar. I don't know. I'm kind of curious as to why I don't, why the differences are. But
do you think it might go down to just having a longer term affection for this character?
I thought that, but I've known who Squirrel Girl was for 25 years now, though, too. So she's Squirrel Girl's not a flavor of the month for me. I've known who she was.
Right.
It's just, I do like Patsy Walker, though. I do like the character better. So, but it's weird how similar the titles are from, just the tone and the look. And I really like one and not the other. But.
Okay, for people listening, they don't know that we lost Bryan for a second, but he's back. So why don't we take this opportunity to transition to another part of the comic book world. Steve, do you have any indie books you want to talk about?
Well, by indie books, I don't know if you'd include Vertigo in there. Probably not.
Oh, why the hell not?
Well, what I've been doing, and people have been listening along since probably November. since Vertigo decided to start relaunching and revamping their line of comics, they've been coming out with new number one every week for the past 3 months, I think. And the latest, and I think probably the last number one, along with Lucifer, was the book Last Gang in Town. And Bill, I don't know if you've heard too much about this or read too much about this. If anybody else has seen much about this book.
I do have it. I got it as part of the bundle of the third wave of number ones.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so why don't you tell me about it?
It's wonderful, is what it is, and it's right up your alley too. Basically, it's by Simon Oliver and Rufus Dayglow as the writer and artist. And
what an awesome name!
I know.
Oh my God!
It's very punk, basically, which is what this book is about. It takes place in 1977 with flash forwards to 2018. And it highlights a time in the British music scene where punk was really starting to appear and to make itself known. And in this book, it focuses on a punk band of just pure punk ruffians. They have no respect for authority, have no respect for other musicians. They're just there to wreak havoc, have a good time, play some music, and smash shit up. And it also follows I believe she's a music producer. They haven't really revealed too much about her, what she's currently doing, but she comes from a very rich background and is starting to put things into motion to create this band, to sort of build this sort of punk gang, if you will. That's the titular, the gang of the title. Along with another sort of shady character who's just a homeless punk girl that she takes an interest to, and decides to mash together with this band that you find out that she's been sort of manipulating a little bit without their knowing to put them together. And very apropos, because we're recording this the day after David Bowie passed away, there is a reference to a character called Pink UFO, who is a pastiche of David Bowie and probably some other sort of glam characters in the late 70s. He even has the Ziggy Stardust lightning bolt down the middle of his face, but it is a very unflattering portrayal. They're constantly making fun of him. They make fun of the idea that he's kind of sold out, that he's just a posh dude who's bought a cheese farm, and use that as part of the justification to make a big mess of things and to steal his instruments. And honestly, this book is chaotic. It's crazy. It's super punk. The art is just wild. It has a very interesting style. But Bill, I think it's right up your alley. And anybody who's really into music comics, this really takes the cake. And of course, it can't get lauded enough by another sort of very musically inclined and music connected author-artist. Michael Allred has the byline on the cover talking about how rock and roll it is. So it's definitely comes highly recommended by people in the comics industry who do like rock and roll comics and those musically influenced books, and this definitely takes the cake.
That's cool. We've had a good year for this.
Mm-hmm.
This did come out at the very tail end of 2015, right?
Yeah, I think this was either the second to last or the last week.
Right. Just thinking of Saints when we had Sean Lewis on, and it's been a good year for music-oriented books, and this is definitely one I need to catch up on to hit that first issue.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I actually did read this, right after I just read Saints number 4. So it was kind of going from, the black death metal characters that he's been pulling into that book, and then goes straight into 1970s punk. It's just a lot of fun, and I'm thinking I would really recommend this. It is going to be a mini series. I can't remember if it's 8 or 12 issues, but it's definitely good. I think this is one that you could read in singles and not be too cheesed off that you have to wait for an extra month, or you could just go ahead and wait a year and get the trade. But it's definitely good. It's very fun, and the characters are It's very tongue-in-cheek humor, but the art's just fun and silly and humorous and gritty. Love it.
Okay. Any other indie books, fellas?
I think Steve and I have been reading Jupiter's Circle.
Okay, well, why don't you tell us
You wanna
about the
talk
beginning of the volume 2 of that?
Oh boy.
Sure, you want to
Steve,
take this?
Start me out here.
Oh, okay.
No. Well, I mean, I can start us out, but it gets kind of crazy in the second issue. So the first issue, I will say this. Wilfredo Torres does his best Ronald Reagan. The opening page of issue 1, and I can't remember, it's the Superman character. I got to figure out what his name is. But I mean, again, Superman character. He's taking his Lois Lane character, his equivalent, to a date on, I think it's like the moon, or it's like it's a moon of Saturn or something.
Yeah.
Her name is Jane.
Europa. Yeah, Europa.
Oh, Europa. Thank you. And like, I mean, I'm looking back at it right now, and oh my God, like that first one is ridiculously Ronald Reagan, but as it goes through, it sort of flashes Ronald Reagan to a little more Superman, maybe Reeves era. I don't know. It's an interesting sort of a thing there, but it's intercutting their date and how Jane, or Lois Lane, feels about her relationship and how he does everything perfectly for her and she's sort of feeling inadequate. It contrasts that with the Wonder Woman-esque character who just like doesn't want to be known as just Wonder Woman. I feel like we've maybe talked a little bit about this. Steve, this feels familiar.
I don't know if
We've never covered the second series of Jupiter Circle on the show.
Well, good then. So it's basically that in the first issue, which it's pretty much kind of standalone. It kind of finishes up in one place with their relationship sort of contrasted. And the Wonder Woman thing is kind of hilarious because she's got this like Steve Trevor person, very, very Steve Trevor-ish, military guy, that Wonder Woman, as her Diana, common person, rendition, like is basically just wanting to have sex with this guy, like just like hit it and quit it or something. And the guy gets all kind of weirded out because he's having sex with Wonder Woman. And then it turns her off. And so you just get this really kind of funny counterbalance between, the Superman Lois perfect relationship, but Lois or Jane is feeling a little inadequate, but overall they're happy and fulfilled. And then poor old Wonder Woman living the life of a spinster.
Yeah.
Like it's this issue, the first issue anyway, it's very much what a lot of books do. They deconstruct superheroes and they kind of play with these ideas. And it kind of reminded me of the Sex book where they're kind of doing this thing where they're deconstructing Batman's sexuality after a fashion. And, Alan Moore's done it. A lot of people have done it, but Miller isn't doing it in a way that I think is meant to tear these characters down as much as just explore these ideas with their analogs, not Superman, not Wonder Woman, but almost more in a reverent way. I don't feel like he's ripping apart what these characters are, just exploring things about them that are believable, but also sort of reveal more about who they are. That's the first issue. The second issue is different altogether. Like it kind of takes a different tack. Steve, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, and actually just to kind of go off of that first issue, like you're saying, a lot of other writers do like to deconstruct superheroes, and I think this series of Jupiter's Circle, and the first volume too, really kind of are similar in style in their focus on particular heroes to Kurt Busiek's Astro City. Not in the grand scheme of, they're very different books, but I think the way that that Miller in this one lovingly looks at these characters, flaws and all, but doesn't ultimately tear them down as like, well, look how terrible these characters are, in the same way that, say, Alan Moore did in Watchmen. Where they're so flawed that really we're no better with them than we are without them. And in the second issue, Again, I think it's going to be part of a two-parter because of how it ended, similar to what they were doing in the first Jupiter Circle volume. But you're looking at, I guess, is it the Blue Fox is the character? Sort of the Batman.
He feels like he's kind of the Batman, yeah.
Yeah, he's super rich and whatnot. But at the end of the first volume, he kind of drops out. He retires early. And decides to go off and wander the U.S. to experience what it's like to be an American. So of course, in this issue, he ends up hanging out with Jack Kerouac and William S. Burroughs, dropping acid, and then talking about, the capitalist machine and the race riots in L.A. in 1965, which I think are going to play a much bigger part after what happened on the last couple of pages. And it's very interesting, and I think in this, probably it's going to be a two-parter, I would think. Unlike the first standalone issue where you're looking at the personal foibles and relationships of these characters, I think in this book, in this issue, and probably issue number 3, we're going to see the relationship of these characters to the events, the political events around them. And, Volume 1 was really about society, so the culture. This one, I think, is going to be more about politics. And, of course, it takes place during the 60s, where the last volume took place mostly in the 50s. So I think Miller's kind of taking his super team into a very volatile period of American history and seeing how that's going to work. So, in the first book, the Wonder Woman character, and I can't remember her name, is I wouldn't say she's a high-powered businesswoman, but she's a successful businesswoman. And that type of role in the early 60s would be very difficult to come by. I mean, we've all watched Mad Men. We kind of know what happens when you have a powerful woman in a male-dominated business place. People get intimidated, or they treat her like she's some kind of bitch or whatever, and just don't know how to act around her. And in this volume, it's Blue Fox taking on the idea that maybe the American ideals that they were given superpowers to protect and to champion may not be the best. And the 60s were perfect for that, because that's exactly what happened. Everything was being questioned. And the civil rights that are taking the civil rights movement that are taking center stage in this book, I think are going to be very interesting to see how Miller can put his characters in to react. Because, of course, with Blue Fox very clearly intervening on the side of the rioters in the last couple of pages is probably going to contrast with what the rest of the super team are expected to do as well. So I don't know. It sounds like he's setting up a very interesting storyline here, and it may only be about 2 issues for this particular one. But as he moves through the decade, I'm sure we're going to see a little bit more challenge to the super team, where the social challenges and the cultural challenges from the 50s in Volume 1 were front and center.
I'm going to switch over to some DC talk. Is that okay?
Yay!
Of course.
Is anyone reading Batman: The Dark Knight, The Master Race?
Yes.
What do you think of it?
It's a good job at playing like a cover artist, he's because it's really not Frank Miller. I mean, he was consulted and I guess involved, but it's more Azzarello, I think.
Certainly the dialogue is much more Azzarello than...
And the art isn't Frank Miller either. So the art is one of the Kubert. I think it's Andy Kubert.
Yeah, but with Klaus Janson, who was Miller's longtime inker.
That's true, and that helps. And he's trying to ape Frank Miller's style to some extent as well, his penciling style, the blocky characters. And, they're doing an interesting job of trying to, like I said, play a cover, because they're doing things like the Talking Heads. And the story so far, it's not very far along in plot. Like, by the end of the second issue, you kind of know, here's what's actually happening insofar as who's alive, who's not. I have actually been enjoying the little inset mini comics more than the main story. That's where I think the most interesting stuff's happening. But I don't know. What do you think?
I am really surprised how much I am enjoying this series. You could not get a person who hated Dark Knight 2 more than me. I hated that with a burning passion. I really felt after a point that series was vulgarity for vulgarity's sake.
Right.
One time I called it a terrible second date after a near perfect first one. You know, this is what Dark Knight 2 should have been. It's interesting you're saying like cover version, because I think one statement about The Force Awakens that I don't necessarily agree with, but I understand where the mentality behind the statement comes from, is that it's a really good cover version of a song I like. And there is some of that there. The main difference I'm seeing is this feels very... It doesn't feel nearly as packed as Dark Knight or Dark Knight 2 was. Though they are playing with, like 16-panel grids like you said, Brian, it's not happening as often in this series. So it's in some ways it's letting it breathe a little bit more. And I really like the way the non-Bat characters are being incorporated into the story. And I really like the mini comics as well. They're serving the main story, but at the same token, it's almost like this little prize out of a Cracker Jack pack.
Yeah.
It's helping the propulsion of the main story, but at the same token, they're existing on their own. They have different artistic teams. And I think as the way the series has been structured so far, to me, it's very, very successful in what it sets out to do. And like I said, I hated Dark Knight 2 like you wouldn't believe. And to have this come out after that, because I think everybody's expectations were so low, and we're expecting a shitstorm, and what we're getting is something very far from that. I'm really glad that this is going to be added to that lexicon. I never thought Dark Knight should have been continued, but I'm much more comfortable having this as a code, if in fact that is what it is, than the piece of shit we had with Dark Knight 2.
Oh, I agree. Dark Knight 2 was never my favorite either. And I, for years, thought I just didn't get it. But I went back recently and I reread both of them. And, Dark Knight, the Dark Knight Returns is far superior from the story and the art execution. Like, I don't know what they were doing in the second one. It was just bizarre.
Oh, my God.
Visually and story.
Frank Miller's women are so repulsive now. Yuck.
I think he's proven that he's also a bit of a misogynist. in more recent interviews, he's had some really interesting things to say, and it's one of those cases where unfortunately a creator may have just kind of gone off the deep end, which is why I'm really interested to see what he does with, is it not the Master Race? What they're doing another book, the Dark Knight prequel.
It's a prequel to, I think it serves as a prequel to Master Race and a prequel to Dark Knight. And it's a Superman-based one-shot. We are getting something else where he has a bit more of an active role. And this might be the way to treat him, because he is kind of the crazy uncle at Thanksgiving. And I'm slowly getting back up to date with DC. Darkseid War is pretty good so far. Enjoying it.
Great.
But, man, I got a lot of books to catch up with. I just love the pace of Darkseid War. I just love Johns and the New Gods.
I agree, but right now I'm feeling a bit apprehensive. I'm hoping that they're going to take this time to redeem themselves after Forever Evil, because they've just brought back the the Injustice League or whatever the hell they were called. For bringing them back so soon when the horrible Forever Evil is still so fresh in my mind, I'm worried. Because we've got them all back. We've got Power Ring or Volthoom in charge of Jessica's brain. We've got Grid, who's just taken over Cyborg's body. We've got Superwoman being crazy with a baby. I don't know. Owlman shows up at the last minute going, we've got to work with the Justice League. I don't know what the hell's going on with that. And I'm praying that they don't screw it up, because Forever Evil just pissed me off so much after all that promise when they really got into the meat of the evil Earth 3 people standing around talking a lot,
right?
Doing absolutely nothing of any consequence other than blowing stuff up and killing people.
Right.
So it concerns me, but everything else about the Darkseid War is amazing.
Okay.
I don't dislike. I maybe I used to not like it, but thinking back at Forever Evil, I didn't dislike it, and I feel like that this is an extension of Forever Evil in that this is John's story of the Justice League. Like, it all ties in from their initial coming together to fight Darkseid through the Forever Evil into the Darkseid War, and they all sort of interrelate in different ways. So like, he's maybe redeeming what a lot of people didn't like, but it's interesting that Johns has been able to tell this really epic storyline from the beginning of this Justice League back when DC, the New 52. So it's kind of impressive if you step back and look at it. This is kind of like he's done it in other spaces. I mean, he's done it before, but it reminds me of like what Hickman did in that he's built this epic story through a title that is been in chunks and phases, but all sort of fits together nicely. So I'm really loving it, and I love the New Gods thing, and I actually think once he's done, it's going to be a really interesting, kind of nice, cohesive thing that he's built. So,
I do agree with that. And there are some good things that came out of Forever Evil, like Grayson. I mean, we wouldn't have Grayson if Forever Evil didn't, reveal his identity, kill him off, and bring him back.
As much as I enjoy Grayson, I do think it's a temporary fix.
I'm kind of hoping that isn't temporary. I like it.
Oh, I do not. No. I am in total disagreement with you there.
Yeah.
Dick Grayson was born to be a superhero, and he's one of the few characters that you can say that about.
Give it another 3 years. I mean, they'll bring him back, obviously, but it'll be another 3 years. Bryan, I think I do see Johns doing some similar work here that he did with Green Lantern, where when he started the Green Lantern story with Rebirth, it flowed through Blackest Night very clearly, and the Spectrum War and all of that really sort of it was all tied together with everything that he built with like the different colored cores and all of that. He is definitely doing it with Justice League, and I do like what's happening in Darkseid War, but again, having the Crime Syndicate pop up again always makes me apprehensive.
Okay.
Based on what happened with Forever Evil.
Can I refer you to one particular page in a very old book that might make you think a little differently?
No! I
Okay.
mean, yeah.
Okay. Think of that moment in Crisis on Infinite Earths where Ultraman, who has been the villain of this world, goes out into the unknown through the antimatter to try to save the world he's part of.
I do remember that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And to me, that is the vibe that I'm getting somewhat. I think Johns is doing a much better job at tying the strings together here than with Green Lantern, because Green Lantern was an explosion. There were so many good ideas in the space of a very short period of time. And this one seems a little more constricted. I don't want to say refined, because there's so much joyous things that came out of John's run with Green Lantern that will never be taken away. I mean, they're part of the lexicon that just can't be removed. He is the most important Green Lantern writer ever. But this one, it almost seems like it's broader in scope, but at the same time, a more intimate story in some ways. It's very weird the more you think about it. I'm glad it's been playing out the way it has, because it's an unexpected pleasure, because he really lost me between Forever Evil and Luthor joining the League, and
Trinity War. Don't forget Trinity War.
I already forgot. I forgot what happened in Trinity War.
Well, Trinity War,
it was a
Trinity War,
prelude.
it would lead up to
it was the big bait and switch where everybody was thinking that was the big summer event, and it turned out to be 6 issues and a couple of tie-ins.
Oh, and the entirety of Justice League America.
And Justice League Dark. It was all 3 titles.
Well, no, I'm just saying that Justice League of America, the entire purpose of that book was just to lead into...
Yeah.
Was to lead into Forever Evil and get canceled.
I cannot remember. I honestly cannot remember what happened in Trinity War. Any other DC, or are we good?
I did want to bring up Swamp Thing #1.
Okay, because I haven't read it, and I would like to hear what it's like.
If you haven't read it, I don't want to ruin it too much.
Don't worry.
Kidding.
I have the internet
actually,
for that.
If you've read Swamp Thing before, I don't want to say this is a rehash of previous Swamp Things, but it kind of is, kind of not. It is definitely the New 52 Legacy Swamp Thing, where he's the Avatar of the Green, the Parliament of Trees, is there, and they're, he's more or less separated himself from them. After the events in his book. So this is just it's a 6-issue miniseries. Len Wein. Len Wein is writing it, which is pretty fantastic. And Kelly Jones' art makes me think of 1980s, 1990s Swamp Thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's got that feel to it. It's got the murky colors, the very organic, bubbly, bubbly figures and everything. It's pretty fantastic, and it's a horror book again. So,
getting a lot of ambient noise. Now it's gone.
Ooh, okay.
That was my dog licking himself. I apologize.
Okay.
It wasn't me licking myself.
I am so keeping that in.
That you didn't have to hold the microphone right next to him, though.
Did anybody else read the new Midnighter, the newest issue?
I've not gotten it yet.
So I do want to say one thing about it. It's a new storyline, so they pick up sort of where they left off with the last storyline. Different artist, not Akko, and it's not the best. It's much more traditional art. But the big thing that worries me is this storyline. It looks like Midnighter is going to be going up against a lot of popular DC villains or whatever, including Harley Quinn.
Okay.
And I feel like that could be editorial, like, sort of pushing this back into the more mainstream DC, which, I mean, they've had Grayson, they've had other things from DC, but it worries me for Steve Orlando that he's getting that pressure now, and maybe it was his idea. I mean, I hope it was.
It also might not be. It
yeah.
also makes sense to me from a standpoint that if this is a book that is getting some degree of notoriety yet isn't really hitting with the masses, to incorporate those elements, it seems like a good plan. I just thought it made sense to not do it with the first arc.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. Well, why don't we wrap this one up? We're getting a little late there on the clock. We move on to the final segment of our show, which is the Woofs of the Week segment, where we spotlight something we want you to know about, whether it be a comic book or something else, usually ingrained in pop culture. I'm going to go across the board here in the view that I have on these three handsome gentlemen on Skype and then round up at myself. So, Brian, what is your woof of the week?
I may not be the only person with this woof, but this recording, as Steve mentioned earlier, comes a day after the news broke that David Bowie had passed away. And I want to give a specific shout out to something that was written by my friend and one of the founders of the Nerdy Show Network, Kat Blackard, for Consequence of Sound. And it's an article about basically the title is David Bowie Lives with an exclamation point. And I want to give a shout out to him specifically for writing this article because it does what I think Bowie intended with his final artistic statement of Black Star, and that its release coincided so soon or almost right on top of his death. It raises questions about, what was his intent with this. I think it veers a little into reading too much into it with, did this signify Bowie dying as an artistic figure, but actually living as David Jones? Like, it calls into question a lot of things, but I think it does it in a way that Bowie would have really appreciated. And that's that his legacy is so long lasting and so profoundly impacting upon everyone. I mean, just the whole world knows now. If they didn't already, they certainly know now. And I didn't realize how much of a effect that his death would have on me. And we were talking about this in our own little Facebook chat, and I didn't even bring it up, but I think Bill, you brought it up, or Steve. And I think I'm still a little in shock. And especially because I started listening to Black Star, the album, this past weekend, like the day of, eventually, like that Sunday, that announcement, and listening to Lazarus, the song, and then watching the video early Monday morning when I found out. The whole experience has been surreal, and it's made me go back and sort of plunge into my archive of Bowie music, which I hadn't listened to much at all in the last few years. It had just dropped off my radar. But man, I really am starting to appreciate the impact that his music and his artistic view had on me as a younger musician playing the sax, as a person who aspires to be an artist in certain ways. Like it really is starting to ring very clear to me that he was a huge factor in my development in my life. And so as a shout, I definitely want to refer you guys to the Consequence of Sound article, because they've given some great coverage to this, but Cap's article is really fun to read and really fitting for this whole thing that he's done with Black Star. So definitely, I'm sure everyone's doing it, but share your favorite Bowie video on Facebook or Twitter. Go back through the immense catalog that he's got, and just spend time in that space, because I feel like it's going to have more meaning to you now, especially in his death being so recent, whether or not it's true or not or whatever. Give yourself the time to grieve and honor his memory, because it's a really special moment in the worldview right now. So it's, take advantage of this time and think about David Bowie and what he means to your life.
That is so well said, Brian. Thank you for that.
Oh.
It's interesting you brought up Black Star, because I can't listen to it right now. I almost feel as if it's snatching the diary out of the casket, and I really need to have a little bit of time to explore that. As some people know, I've recently started another podcast with my buddy Tito, the Tito and Bill Good Time Hour, and it's not going to be so much of a good time on the next episode that we're doing, because we are going to be doing a memorial for Bowie. I saw him live in concert 10 times. I saw Tin Machine live, and we're going to be going through our favorite songs and our experiences seeing him live and how we were first introduced to Bowie. Mine is a really weird introduction to Bowie. And for people who read comics, if you don't think Bowie had an influence on comics, man, that whole crew that was born out of 2000 AD, I think particularly with a lot of the British writers and artists, there's a heavy influence there. Sometimes probably subconscious, but it's definitely a huge impact, and what we have suffered is the loss of a singular figure. So, Steve, what's your wolf of the week?
Well, since you guys spent a lot of time talking about David Bowie, I won't mention him much at all, other than go back, listen to his music, and just remember his schlong pants will live on forever in Labyrinth. And I thought that was kind of a private joke that my high school friends and I had about it, but it really wasn't. A lot of people know exactly what I talk about when I mention schlong pants and Labyrinth and David Bowie. So, in fact, I think there were whole websites dedicated to it. As far as I understand it. But anyway, my wolf of the week, and a little bit more mirthful corner of the universe, Tracy Ullman is back on television. She has a new comedy series, a new sketch comedy series that's out on the BBC, started this week, and I think it's coming to BBC America, so we'll be able to see it on this side of the pond, or if you're more enterprising, you can see it through other means. Like myself, I'm not going to say how, but it is hilarious. She takes on lots of major women, lots of major figures in the UK and in Europe, and just brilliant. She even has a couple song and dance numbers in the first episode. Her makeup for Angela Merkel and for Dame Judi Dench is outstanding. And in fact, from a few feet away, she looks exactly like them. It's pretty fantastic. Whoever the makeup artist is on this, and I forgot to check who, the design is fantastic and wonderful, and her characters are just perfectly done. And I think the sight of a Dame Judi Dench vandalizing Rupert Grint's iPad, then running off to set fire to his trailer, just fill me with glee. Or Angela Merkel, picking out a new pantsuit and a new blazer to wear. They're all the same color. And she's like, no, that one makes my breast look too big, or, whatever. It's just really, it's fantastic. It's just a real return to form that we haven't seen on TV for a while. I think her last series was on HBO a couple years ago.
Yep. Tracy Takes On.
Tracy Takes On.
And it's pretty much politically based.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's been some time since that, and since then her life has been a little bit up and down. She's had some recent tragedies and deaths in the family, but she just brings her her old self back from when I remember first seeing her as a kid with the Tracy Ullman Show on Fox, which of course most millennials will remember was the birth of The Simpsons was on her show. So, or not remember, I should say, because they probably weren't around or born then. But yeah, I do highly recommend it if you have a chance to see it, either now or when it finally gets brought over to BBC America.
Justin, what is your wolf of the week?
My wolf of the week is geared very specifically towards you, Mr. Zanowitz.
Oh, shit.
Bill. No, because, see, in my dream, my hope of hopes, I would love to see a DC Comics Lego Legion of Superheroes headquarters with all sorts of little Legionnaires floating around and, Computo, things like that. Until then, today they announced the Batman 66 classic TV series Batcave. Did you see this, Brother Bill?
For Lego?
For Lego.
No, I haven't.
2,000. What is it? 2,526 pieces. You have the Batmobile, the Batcopter, the poles that they can swing down, slide down from the library with the little heads. You have the Batcopter, the Batplane. You have the Cesar Romero Joker. You have Catwoman. Just the Penguin, Bruce Wayne, Whittler, and they are fantastic looking. If I was not having plans to do something in March, I would be buying this and dealing with the ramifications. This looks amazing.
Ooh, this looks pricey too. $269.
Pricey, yes.
Wow.
It is one of the higher ones. Some of the Star Wars ones beats it, but when you factor in just the size of it. And, this is a huge set for when it comes to Legos.
Brian, as a big Lego guy, have you seen this?
I saw it today, and I don't know yet if I'm going to buy it. And here's why. The Legos that I have now, other than the most recent Doctor Who Lego set, which I got for Christmas, which I love and I just finished putting together, a lot of the bigger sets sit in a box that I built, and then I had to move, and I kind of tore them apart and put them in bags, and they're sitting in storage. So this thing is amazing. Like, I would definitely want it, but I also kind of want the Ghostbusters house, and I want the Simpsons house and Quickie Mart, and there's just nowhere to put that stuff. So, like, it's one of those, and this is the thing that sucks about Legos is they go out of print, and then they're like collectors. It's kind of sucky if you don't get the set you want, and squirrel it away, you may miss out. But yeah, I'm very excited for this. It looks amazing.
Okay, my wolf of the week is music-based, but it's not about David Bowie. As Steve had referenced earlier, when he throws out references to 77 punk, it's right at me. That's what I grew up on, punk and wave from the late 70s and early 80s. And if you grew up musically at that time, you kind of viewed a lot of other genres like southern rock or progressive rock with a lot of disdain and always dismissed them in a sense. Very recently, I watched the documentary on the group Kansas, which is titled Miracles Out of Nowhere, which is one of their songs from an album, Left Overture. And it's a very well done documentary about a band that came of age in the 70s, started out as an opening act, at least on a national level, then attained headliner status. It goes through their recording career and the revelations of Carry On Wayward Son and Dust in the Wind. A song like Carry On Wayward Son, if a rock song has one good hook, that's a rare thing. This song has 4. And if more music was like this in the mid-70s, there would have been no need for punk. So as I get older, I'm much more susceptible and much more agreeable to certain types of progressive rock, and this has made me explore their catalog and take it seriously in a way that I never had before. So my wolf of the week is the documentary, which is out on Blu-ray and on DVD through Kansas's website and through Amazon and again, the movie is called Miracles Out of Nowhere, and it's the story of Kansas. So that is my wolf of the week. All right, we are officially wrapping this one up. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. If you want to reach out to us, you can do so by writing to us by email at comicbookbears@gmail.com. You can download us through iTunes and through Stitcher and through Podbean. On iTunes, we are both on our own feed and also a feed from the Earth 2 Podcast Network, which has a number of other shows on that, and they're all pretty cool, and they're all hosted by pretty cool guys. And I guess that's all we have to say, and we made it through a triage episode. So, until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Justin Allen.
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back next week. Take care, everyone.
Woof!